iHeartRadio.
Let's start the show. Come on, let's go. Say ho, say ho, whoa, ho, whoa. Let's start the show. Let's start the show.
Picture health and vitality. I can thank my parents' genetics for allowing me to be such a robust individual when it comes to making my way through allergy season. I'm not a robust individual when it comes to making my way through allergy season. That is something I have no gratitude to my parents for. There's a lot of things I do have gratitude to my parents for, though. A lot of tools they gave me, I suppose, both intentional and unintentional, to make my way in the world. I think the best thing my parents did for me, the best thing that my parents did for me in terms of setting me off on a path where I wouldn't be, I wouldn't wind up in prison. I wouldn't wind up homeless. I wouldn't wind up any of these things that are so potentially incumbent upon a child born into the world these days. I think the best thing that my parents did for me was, well, they wanted me. They actively tried to conceive. I might have even been, sort of a second or third attempt. I think my mom had a miscarriage at some stage in the game. It wasn't something that my mother liked to talk about very much. But it did come up once or twice. And, the pain there was great because my mother wanted a child. My father wanted a child, too. So it's not something I feel like belaboring at family get-togethers when I do see my mom or my dad and be like, hey, you remember that really uncomfortable thing that happened before I was born? Let's talk about that. So I don't really have all the details, but I do know that they really wanted to have me. It was important to them to have children. And it was important to them to have children with one another. It's interesting. There's this biological urge, I think, that gets you when you meet the right person. No matter how many times you've told yourself, there's so many kids in the world. There's so many kids in the world that don't have parents, and adoption is a good thing. And that's totally, totally true, by the way. That is 100% true. The sensible thing to do is adopt. Well, I'm worried that I won't love it as much as my own kid. Hey, I have a dog that I love more than anything. In fact, every single dog that I've ever had, I've loved more than everything and anything. Those aren't even the same species as me, and within a couple of weeks of them living in my home, that's it. We are bonded. We are one. They are my family. So you can adopt a kid unless there's something very, very wrong with you, which I understand. I mean, I think people have fears and doubts and nervousness about their abilities as a parent and think maybe there is something wrong with them. But unless there is something wrong with you, to have a child in your home and not develop a bond with it and not love it, it's just going to happen. It really, really is. And look, adoption makes incredible amounts of sense. Tons of kids in this world that have nothing and no one. And you could give them a home, and you could give them love, and you could give them family, and that should not be discounted. But there is a biological urge that hits people that I think hit my mom and dad, where you find that right person. And no matter how much you feel like adoption is the logical route to go in this particular situation, there's something that takes over. Something that roots back to the caveman days, where it's like, I want to get that pregnant, or I want to carry that man's child. And I want to see something that's half me and half her running around, or half him and half me running around. That hits people. And that possibly is the best thing that my parents did for me, and that they wanted me. They actually wanted me. And they took some kind of care of me. They weren't the best, most attentive parents. There's certain places where I could go, ooh, I would have been very different and maybe better equipped to deal with the world if this had gone differently in my childhood, or that had gone differently in my childhood. But ultimately, they gave me a great set of tools to go out into the world. Some intentional, some not. Some sort of circumstantial and genetic. You know, I don't know where I get I don't know where I get the sense of joy in learning that I have. but I do. When I'm learning things, I feel like I'm becoming a better person. I love it. I love the idea that new information is seeping into my brain. I've always loved it, and that's stood me in fairly good stead. I mean, they gave me the gift of being, allergy season aside, fairly robust, 6'1", and never really had health problems that are that bad. There was that one 6th grade year that I spent mostly in the hospital because of some weird stomach affliction. But other than that, I've been blessed with good health, or my parents have blessed me with good health and a joy in learning. These are things that, they've served me very well over time. And there's lots of other things that my parents did for me, lots of other pieces of knowledge, lots of other ways of bringing me up, exposing me to music, allowing me to have access to musical instruments as a young child, which set me off on a career path that got me a record deal as a teenager, which then turned me into a radio host, which brought me here today. And I have a lot of fun doing what I'm doing. There's lots and lots of things that my parents gave me that I am eternally grateful for. And I bet you feel the same way about your parents. But the bottom line is, maybe they weren't the most involved parents. Maybe they weren't the most hands-on parents. Perhaps there was a little bit more that they could have done. But I'm here today because there's no greater name for a leader than mother or father. There's no leadership more important than parenthood. And when that goes wrong, we have serious problems. We'll discuss that later in the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
You walk these streets most every day. You're waiting to get washed away.
Now, a year in rock spotlight, 1969.
Keep on burning. Proud mirror, keep on burning. Rolling on the river.
In January of 69, Creedence Clearwater Revival has a number 2 hit with Proud Mary. The Beatles perform live for the last time on the rooftop of Apple Records in London. And after touring as the New Yardbirds in September of 68, Jimmy Page renames the band Led Zeppelin and releases their debut, which goes top 10 in both the US and UK. In February of 69, Detroit rockers MC5 released their debut album Kick Out the Jams on Elektra Records. Tommy James and the Shondells have a number 1 hit with the psychedelic-influenced Crimson and Clover. And San Francisco, Sly and the Family Stone go to number 1 with the single Everyday People.
Keep listening to iHeartRadio for more from 1969. Coming up. iHeartRadio goes one-on-one with Mike Rutherford to talk about why he felt the documentary Genesis, Some of the Parts, was worthy of production.
People forget from that one band, school band, you had the Gabriel career, the Collins, the Mechanics career, and then you put songs together. This is the key. You see a list of songs and you kind of go, In the Air Tonight, Invisible Touch, Living Years, Biko, and you kind of go, that's a great combination of songwriting. And so in a way, this documentary tries to sort of cement that a little bit. Because I meet people still these days who say to me, you mean you're the Mike and the Mechanics? They don't tie it in all the time. So in a way, this documentary, I think, helps do that.
Keep listening to iHeartRadio for more Mike Rutherford and all your favorite artists.
Hey, you, what's that sound? Coming so loud from your radio dial. AD, be getting down when you're rocking the jams. Here I am, going back once again. I'm ruling all city like a king.
Today on the show, we're talking a little bit about parenthood. We're coming up on Father's Day, which is a complete coincidence. What sparked this interest in the ability to, not the ability to have kids, but the desire to have kids. What sparked this was the interesting story about the guy who went through such tremendous lengths to bail on his responsibilities as a father. It was next level sneakiness when it came to wanting to get out of his child's life and wanting to not have to take responsibility for the fruit of his loins. And quite honestly, I mean, look, there's people that have done worse things in this world, but it disgusts me and sickens me in a way that not many things do. Why? Well, if you've listened to the show for any length of time, you've heard me bang on and on about how I think that education is the cure-all, pretty much, for the vast majority of what ails this world. Education is something that's going to, well, it gives a kid, outside of just, learning, reading, writing, arithmetic, and all the above, education gives a child a sense of possibility, gives a child a sense that there might be more to the world than what they're experiencing right now. A child with an education has belief in themselves. A child with an education has belief that there's more out there for them than what they've been led to believe just by their circumstances. A child with an education is less likely to rob a liquor store. And on the other side of the world, a child with an education is less likely to strap a bomb to his chest. And like I said, if you've listened to the show for any length of time, you've heard me bang on and on about how education, I believe, is this vast, sweeping cure-all that can help solve a lot of the world's ills. It's a very, very important thing. The important thing, I think. But coming one step before education, there comes parenthood. There comes the desire to foster a young life in the world. And if not foster, if not guide, if not be an active, involved parent, at least want to take some kind of responsibility for it. The idea that someone could have a child in this world and not feel that way, to me, is just an alien, foreign, unbelievable concept. Yet it happens all the time. It happens all the time. And it was, well, a light was shone on this fact when I came across a story about a man who went to lengths to avoid responsibility for his child that were so devious and so involved that I was like, really? To avoid being a parent, one of the greatest gifts, something that people are looking for every single day, something that so many people can't do, to avoid being a parent, to avoid being involved in your kid's life. You're willing to go to these lengths? What the hell's going on around here? We'll discuss who it was and exactly what he did and why it's an indicator of big problems to come if there's more folks like him in a little bit. Right now, though, let's take a look at the events of today in our segment, My Witness News. In no way, shape, or form fair. Certainly not balanced.
Booyah!
Booyakasha. Hear me now. How's it going, Funkhauser?
Check. Hey, 1. Hey, 2. I don't know about you, AD, but do people leave your studio in shambles like they leave my studio in shambles?
The morning, every single night before I leave, I try and brew up a fart that's going to last long enough for when the morning show gets there the next day because, well, quite frankly, every single day I walk in there and it smells like the dumpster in an alley next to a Mexican restaurant. What they do to make that room stink the way it does, it's just like, what the hell? Are you running an onion business on the side? Like, I don't know what it is, but the smell in there is revolting. It smells like a mixture of feet, BO, and Mexican food. And I think it's what they leave in the trash can, but it's just, I don't know. They favor a type of food on the morning show that lingers like you wouldn't believe. So sometimes it's a little messy, yeah, but the main problem I have with what people do to my studio when I leave is they make it stink. It's disgusting and awful. And like I said, it causes me to try and brew up the appropriate fart that's going to have the hang time necessary to discuss them the way they discuss me in the morning. But sadly, my posterior is more often than not, fresher than a daisy, especially since I've started eating more healthily. So it's been difficult. But I hold out hope that the appropriate fart can be summoned.
I believe in you.
Straight from why it's good to be a responsible parent, too. I'm trying to build up a good fart to piss off my coworkers. Yeah. All right, then.
Speaking of farts, Farrah Abraham says she's single and back on the market.
Yeah, teen mom Farrah Abraham. She's the one that made the sarcastic air quotes around this sex tape, which was really just straight up porn, where she hired a porn actor to do her and then sold the tape to the highest bidder. Farrah Abraham says she's single and back on the market, which is great news for everyone looking for a woman with a passion